So in one of the leading UK national newspapers, the Telegraph, an article has just been written and posted about why Trump's plan for Gaza, about relocating Gazans away from the Strip to Jordan and Egypt, actually could produce lasting peace, and that, as you can see in the subheadline, Egypt's and Jordan's heavy reliance on American aid gives the president potential leverage. You know, when this was first suggested and people heard Trump suggesting it and people were talking about it, they said, oh, it sounds radical, it's outrageous. Actually, I was saying from the get-go, this sounds like something that is perhaps in some ways it's a bit lamentable that it needs to be the case, but it's the most sensible solution for lasting peace. And I say it's lamentable because had the people of Gaza chosen peace, had they chosen to live side by side, had they been genuinely serious when they just said they wanted self-determination, and that was what it was all about, then there would be peace. There wouldn't have been any fighting. There wouldn't be terrorism. There wouldn't be all these things. But they've shown that they're not actually interested in that. What they're interested in is getting rid of the Jewish people being in the land of Israel, re-establishing sovereignty there. And there's many reasons why. I think it gets to the heart of an Islamist worldview that says Islam's going to dominate the world. And when the Jewish people, who you claim are rejected by God, suddenly return to their land and re-establish sovereignty, it's so threatening. So your only narrative that can allow you to continue your beliefs is to say it must be an evil that must be destroyed. So make no mistake, the Palestinian cause is phony in the sense of it being about nationalism and self-determination. It's about anti-Semitism, and this has been the case since the beginning. So because all of that, it makes more sense to say, right, well, clearly we tried for 100 years for you to want to live in peace, and you don't want to do that. So we're going to relocate you. You consider yourselves Arabs. You consider yourself part of the Arab world. You believe falsely that Israel should be part of the Arab world, a colonial outpost of the Arab world. But you consider yourself Arab, so the Arab world should take you in. The way that, by the way, Israel has taken in many Jews. By the way, this is not to say that non-Jews shouldn't live in Israel. We welcome non-Jews living in Israel. There's just one little condition, which is you shouldn't try to kill us. Sorry for having that precondition in there. But I want to read to you the words of this article because I think we can see, whatever your view of him, President Trump is prepared to go off the beaten track, go off the conventional wisdoms of the past, which have failed us. I want to read to you what the article says, because it's sort of showing the fact that this has been released in the Telegraph, which is a highly respected newspaper in Britain, which, by the way, compared to America, probably leans a little bit more to the left in the UK. I'm saying, the centre of gravity in British politics is a bit more to the left. And the fact that this is endorsing Trump's plan, I think, shows that this potentially could be something where Trump brings a lot of people with him and shifts the conversation. So let me read to you the short piece. So it's written by a national security analyst, Limor Simhoni Philpott. She said, soon after his inauguration, President Trump proposed a controversial plan that sent shockwaves across the Middle East. He suggested to relocate roughly 1.5 million Palestinians out of Gaza and into neighbouring countries, while Gaza undergoes comprehensive reconstruction. On the surface, this seems unrealistic. However, the war sparked by Hamas' massacre of 1,200 Israelis and the abduction of some 250 people has left Gaza in ruins, which may require a radical solution. Trump's out-of-the-box idea is also a practical way to enhance Israel's security. Temporarily removing civilians could weaken Hamas's grip over Gaza, reduce its recruitment pool, and enable a buffer zone that minimizes the risk of attacks. By the way, I don't know where this is going to go in this conversation, but in this article, but I think actually this should not be a temporary shift. It should be a permanent relocation, because otherwise, inevitably, Hamas is going to regain power, or something like Hamas. We're seeing in polling, there's still, according to fairly recent polling, majority support for Hamas in Gaza. I'm not saying there aren't good people out in there, but they're actually the good people if you truly are good, should want relocation. They should want to move elsewhere where they can have a life of peace and prosperity. So the article continues, removing civilians from the war zone would allow the IDF to conduct targeted operations against terrorists with fewer civilian casualties. At a time when Hamas is reportedly regaining power, this could be an effective way to weaken it further. The Israeli government has not formally responded. However, the strongest support for this has come from far-right figures, including Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, who see this as an opportunity to rebuild Jewish settlements in Gaza, a fringe view not reflective of Israeli policy nor supported by the majority of Israelis. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, if you're relocating Gazans and it's permanent, why shouldn't Israel re-establish life in what is historically Jewish territory? And by the way, ask Israeli Arabs. People who fare best do so in the Middle East, have done so under Israel rather than other Arab countries. So if I was an Arab, I would want to live in Israel in terms of any other countries in the Middle East. Hamas, unsurprisingly, has rejected the plan. The terror organization has suffered heavy losses, its leadership decimated, infrastructure and weapons arsenal largely destroyed, and political control weakened. Despite attempting to project an image of triumph, the sight of a mass Palestinian exodus would damage its narrative and further erode its standing. Trump can also expect pushback from regional leaders. Jordan's King Abdullah expressed concern over the prospect of absorbing a large number of Palestinian refugees for an unknown time period. Jordan is home to more than 2 million Palestinians who fled during the 48 and 67 wars. Some still live in refugee camps, while others have integrated into Jordanian society. By the way, I would add that many people actually argue that Jordan is a Palestinian state. And don't forget that the British Mandate of Palestine, before it was handed over to the UN, which then proposed dividing the land in two in 1947, Jordan was originally part of the British Mandate of Palestine. And you have a majority of people in Jordan being Palestinian. So why don't they just call that a Palestinian state? Ironically, it's run by the Hashemite kingdom, who are not Palestinians. So it's a minority ruling over majority, and people don't seem to be bothered by that or upset by that. You have your Palestinian state already, should they wish to identify it as such. Anyway, the article continues, violent clashes between the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the Jordanian government in the 70s meant that King Abdullah may worry about reigniting old tensions, especially if terrorists infiltrate into Jordan among the civilian refugees. Egypt shares some of these concerns, given the close ties between the Muslim Brotherhood, a banned terrorist organization that has considerable presence in Egypt, and Hamas. Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab host countries would also be wary of appearing to collaborate with Israel and the US in permanently relocating Palestinians out of Gaza. Convincing Arab leaders to accept Palestinians for an unspecified period would be a monumental challenge. Trump would need to provide assurances that the relocation is temporary, even though I don't think it should be. That Israel will not use it as an opportunity to establish settlements in Gaza, even though I think they should, and that additional security and financial assistance will be offered. Egypt and Jordan's heavy reliance on US aid gives Trump potential leverage. In 2024, Egypt received $1.3 billion in military aid, while Jordan received approximately $1.5 billion in 2023. If determined, Trump could use this dependency to push his plan forward. I think this is a key point here. As you can see in this article, it's trying to kind of push back on some of the notions which I actually think could be very sensible, albeit radical. But the key point that she's making in this article is that there's heavy reliance on aid, financial aid, and money, of course, talks. And Trump, being a businessman, will know this. The article concludes by saying Trump's bold idea sounds far-fetched. However, providing Palestinian civilians with safe accommodation and access to healthcare, education, and other essential services, while simultaneously weakening Hamas and establishing an alternative moderate leadership in Gaza, could not only help rebuild Gaza, but lay the foundation for better relations between the sides. Now, I have to say, this article, again, we see in this ending, there'll be a moderate leadership in Gaza and lay the foundation for better relations. Again, clearly it seems to me the author is living a little bit in the old conventional wisdoms of the past, thinking that we can just try again. I mean, it's insanity to try again in having Gaza have, or the people of Gaza have autonomy, because every time they've chosen war, and it's bad for both sides. there's going to be more, God forbid, attacks, more terrorism, God forbid. The investment will actually be a total waste of money if we rebuild Gaza and allow the status quo to come back to how it was. So the person that's writing this is trying to push a bit back, and that's why I'm saying that this is more of a, it's a British newspaper. We certainly will be nervous to say or endorse things that are seen as too radical. But the fact that they're even starting to indulge in Trump's idea here and make baby steps towards this shift in paradigm of how we deal with the conflict, I think is a positive development. And let's see what happens. Watch this space. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.